Okay, let's set the scene. Just imagine it for a second. You step into, one of those classic dimly lit arcades.
Oh yeah, you can almost smell the popcorn and hear that background hum of all the machines.
Exactly. And then, cutting through all that noise, you hear it, that really distinct thunk of a light gun, followed by that sudden whir of a foot pedal, and then this booming voice shouting, "Action! Reload!"
Yes, brings it right back.
For so many of us, that's not just some vague memory, right? It's this really visceral, almost heart-pounding experience. A moment that honestly defined a whole era of gaming for a lot of people.
It really did. It captured something special.
So today, we're taking a deep dive into that exact world, the world of Time Crisis. Namco's, completely groundbreaking arcade and PlayStation light gun shooter.
An absolute classic.
And you've given us this fantastic stack of sources to dig into. We've got everything from, nostalgic Reddit threads where people are sharing these amazing memories.
Yeah, those are great.
To really in-depth developer interviews, getting behind the curtain on the design choices, and even some pretty forensic technical breakdowns of how those iconic light guns actually work.
Which is fascinating in itself.
Totally. So our mission today is to unpack not just what made this game so incredibly influential, but also to explore that whole intricate web of technology, the super clever design choices, and just the raw player experiences that really cemented its legendary status.
It's about understanding that whole package, isn't it? Why it resonated so much.
Precisely. We're going to blast through the high-octane action, try and uncover some of that surprising technical wizardry behind the guns.
Yeah, the gun contact is something else.
And really grapple with the challenges, of bringing such a unique physical arcade thing into our living room.
Which was no small feat.
But beyond just the pixels and the plastic guns, we're also going to touch on a deeper question, I think. What does it actually take to preserve these kinds of unique physical gaming experiences in our, increasingly digital world?
That's a huge question right now.
And maybe even more importantly, what are we actually losing if we don't manage to do that?
Right. Is something irreplaceable being lost?
No. So yeah, grab your virtual light gun, or maybe just, get comfortable because we're about to explore a classic that's way more complex, way more strategic, and honestly, way more beloved than just pulling a trigger. Okay, let's unpack this.
Sounds great. It's amazing, isn't it, that a game like Time Crisis, coming out, nearly 30 years ago now,
Incredible.
can still evoke such strong sensory memories, that immediate rush of nostalgia for so many people.
Yeah.
It really points to a kind of magic, doesn't it? A really carefully crafted mix of things that just lifted it way beyond being another coin-op shooter.
Absolutely.
There's definitely a lot to unpack about how Namco managed to create that lasting legacy.
Okay, so we absolutely have to cast our minds back. It's 1995.
Right.
The arcade scene back then was just this vibrant, incredibly competitive space, a real cultural hub,
Totally. Prime arcade era.
You had these massive hitters like Sega's Virtua Cop and the House of the Dead. They were basically dominating that early rail shooter genre. Great games, tons of fun.
Absolutely. Pure shooting thrill.
But Namco, they were kind of riding high themselves, right? They'd had success with Tekken, the fighting game.
Groundbreaking stuff.
And that innovative space shooter Starblade. And they saw this opportunity with Time Crisis. They weren't just thinking, let's make another shooter.
No, their ambition was higher.
They wanted to deliver, and this is a quote, an adrenaline-pumping experience that would genuinely, revolutionize the whole genre. They had a vision for something more.
And you can really see that vision playing out. It paid off.
Right.
What's really insightful, I think, is that while other games were focused on that pure shooting, Namco's team clearly felt that, quote, something was missing. They figured players wanted more than just, blasting everything that moved. Their goal was to inject this new level of strategy and engagement. It wasn't just about reflexes. It was about feeling more connected, almost like you were the star of one of those big 90s action movies.
Like Die Hard or Mission Impossible, yeah.
Exactly. That desire to elevate things, add layers of decision-making, that seems to be the driving force behind Time Crisis.
And they totally nailed that cinematic feeling, partly just through the physical cabinet itself.
Of course.
If you were there, you can probably picture it right now. This big, imposing cabinet, the dedicated light gun sometimes with that satisfying recoil kickback.
Yeah, that force feedback was great.
And of course, the unforgettable bright yellow foot pedal.
The pedal. Iconic.
This wasn't just pressing buttons on a stick, was it? It was this
Yeah.
full body physical interaction. Nothing else was quite like it.
No, it really wasn't.
It genuinely made you feel like a real secret agent, you know?
Yeah.
Right in the thick of it. It just elevated everything, made it so immersive, so tactile. You felt like you were performing, not just playing.
That physical engagement was key.
So with all that physicality, what was the feeling Namco was aiming for? What did they want the player to experience?
That really gets to the heart of their design philosophy. If you connect the dots, the development team had this super clear, ambitious goal to create a cinematic experience.
Yeah.
Right from the start.
Okay.
And their inspiration, as you mentioned, came straight from those huge 90s action movies. Mission Impossible, Die Hard, that kind of high-stakes, high-octane feel.
Yeah.
And the cinematic goal wasn't just like window dressing. It was woven right into the gameplay, the story, everything.
Right.
The story itself, Special Agent Richard Miller, the one-man army from this elite VSSE group. It's not just filler. It's a proper high-stakes mission from the get-go.
Yeah, rescue the princess, right? Or the president's daughter.
Exactly. Princess Rachel McPherson, daughter of Cersei's new president. She's been kidnapped by the bad guys, the tyrant Shuda Garal and his notorious right-hand man, Wild Dog.
Wild Dog. We'll definitely come back to
Oh, yes. And these guys, they want to reclaim their country, destabilize the government. So the tension is baked right into the premise. It's not just random shooting.
And the game absolutely pounds that urgency into you, doesn't it? Which is just brilliant for building tension. The dialogue is so blunt, so immediate.
Yeah, like, there's been a kidnapping, it's Rachel.
Or get into the castle and rescue Rachel. It just keeps reinforcing the danger, the immediacy, and the setting itself, this big fortified castle crawling with soldiers and traps. Plus that timer, that relentless countdown clock on every single level, it really cranked up the sense of urgency and tension.
Absolutely. You couldn't just hang back.
No way. You weren't just clearing rooms. You were literally racing against time. And that forced you into making quick decisions, needing speed and accuracy. It made the game feel way more strategic than other shooters of the time, where you might just, blast everything casually.
Right. The stakes felt genuinely high.
Totally. Richard Miller has to act fast. He doesn't just sneak in. He rams his boat, which is rigged with explosives apparently, right into the castle.
Yeah, quite the entrance.
It's pure action movie logic. The fate of Rachel, maybe the whole country, rests on how fast and accurate you are. It's a properly high-stakes scenario for an arcade game. Every shot feels like it matters.
Which brings us neatly to a really key design innovation. How do you translate that cinematic tension, that strategic urgency, into a game that's still fundamentally about fast reflexes without just making it impossible?
Yeah, how do you balance that?
Their answer was, well, pretty genius. And it leads us straight to one of Time Crisis's absolute defining features.
And that, of course, has to be the pedal.
Pedal.
The great innovation, this big yellow foot pedal right there on the cabinet floor. It let you duck behind cover to reload or just, dodge bullets. And then you release it to pop back up and shoot. Sounds simple, but man, it was revolutionary in how it felt and played.
It's amazing how such a simple physical action could change the gameplay so profoundly. It wasn't just intuitive, it was this unique feature that totally set Time Crisis apart from other light gun games where you were basically, always exposed.
Yep. Right, you were just a target.
Exactly. By giving players this physical way to take cover, it fundamentally shifted the interaction. It added this whole new element of strategy and timing. It wasn't just about aiming fast.
Wow.
You had to think, when do I pop out? When do I duck? Can I reload safely now? All under that intense time pressure.
And it's kind of mind-blowing to think that this signature mechanic, the pedal, almost got cut from the game.
Right. The developer interviews mentioned that. Initial tests apparently left players confused.
Which makes sense, I guess. It was totally new.
It really does. It wasn't something people were used to. And it makes you think, doesn't it? How many other potentially game-changing ideas get shelved? Because they're initially confusing or people don't get them straight away.
Yeah, it takes that leap of faith sometimes.
Exactly. Thankfully, once players got the hang of it, understood the rhythm, duck, shoot, duck, reload, it became, as the developer said, an absolute success.
Ew. Close call.
Imagine Time Crisis without the pedal. The whole series might have been completely different. Maybe just another forgotten shooter.
True. That mechanic wasn't just cool, it points to something deeper, right?
Right.
About how the technology itself actually enabled this new kind of strategic, high-stakes gameplay.
Precisely. And the pedal, brilliant as it was That was really just scratching the surface of Namco's ingenuity, especially when you look under the hood at the tech behind the blaster itself.
Yes, the gun con.
But to really get why Time Crisis and its gun con felt so good, so accurate, we kind of need to dive into the nuts and bolts of how these light guns actually worked back then.
Okay, lay it on us.
So most light guns from that era, including the original gun con, they operate based on how a CRT television screen works.
Yeah.
You know, the old big tube TVs.
Right, the raster scan thing.
Exactly, the raster scanning pattern. And this is where it gets, well, pretty technical, but also fascinating. Unlike our modern flat screens that light up all at once, a CRT doesn't. It has this electron beam, basically a tiny, super bright dot of light that sweeps across the screen incredibly fast, line by line, top left to bottom right, essentially painting the picture hundreds of times a second.
Wow, okay.
So when you pull the trigger on a light gun like the gun con, there's a sensor inside it. It detects that momentary flash of bright light as the beam passes over the exact spot you're aiming at.
Just for that tiny fraction of a second.
Precisely. And here's the crucial part. The game's software isn't just seeing light. It's immediately asking the PlayStation's video chip, okay, at that exact microsecond the gun saw light, where was the electron beam? What were its horizontal and vertical coordinates on the screen?
So it uses the beam's position at that instant to know where you aimed.
Exactly. It's this incredibly precise timing operation, down to the individual pixel. That's the magic trick behind how they got that accuracy.
And that's where the real genius, but also the big challenge lay, especially on the original PlayStation, right?
Absolutely. This super precise timing needed for accuracy, it was actually surprisingly problematic for the console itself. The PlayStation's native, built-in light gun support, according to the developer insights we have, was, quote, pretty bad.
Really? Why?
Well, it apparently lacked the ability to reliably latch or record those video counter coordinates at the exact moment the gun detected the light. Plus, it relied on what developers called a somewhat buggy library of code.
Oh dear.
Yeah. So if developers tried to make a light gun game using just the standard PlayStation tools, they often ended up with really variable accuracy. You could be aiming right at something, pull the trigger, and your shot just goes wild, which, you know, kind of raises the stakes for making a game that demands precision like Time Crisis did.
Yeah, that would be incredibly frustrating.
It's a really important distinction when you look back, like the old NES Zapper. Remember that?
Oh yeah, Duck Hunt.
That worked differently. It didn't rely on the raster scan timing. It flashed the whole screen black, then flashed the targets white one by one. The zapper just detected if it saw a white flash.
Oh, simpler.
Much simpler. Which is why, funnily enough, the zapper sometimes works sort of on modern TVs where the gun con absolutely won't, because it's not tied to that CRT scanning. And even later, the original Xbox did it differently again. It actually sent the video sync signal out through the controller port, which cleverly avoided needing those extra cables the gun con had.
Right, the pass-through cable.
Yeah. So this deep dive into the tech really shows these hidden complexities. It's way more than just point and shoot. How the hardware and software talk to each other fundamentally dictates the experience, especially the accuracy, which really put the pressure on Namco to nail it, given the PS1's weaknesses.
Okay, so given those built-in problems with the PlayStation's native light gun support, how on earth did Namco, this arcade giant, manage to create the gun con, which was famous for being so accurate and responsive? What was their secret sauce?
This is where Namco's real brilliance shines through. It was a genuine stroke of engineering genius that basically ensured Time Crisis wouldn't be kneecapped by the PlayStation's shortcomings.
Okay.
They essentially decided to, quote, ignore the PlayStation's native light gun support and handle it all inside the gun instead.
Wow. Okay, so the gun did the hard work.
Pretty much. It was a really innovative, almost rebellious move. Instead of relying on the console's potentially flaky timing and code libraries, the gun con itself did the complex calculation of figuring out exactly where you were aiming on the screen.
How did it do that?
It then passed those precise aim coordinates directly to the console, not as just a flash-detected signal, but as processed aiming data, using the standard controller communication protocol.
That's clever. But how did the gun itself know where it was aiming so accurately?
That's the truly fascinating part, how they achieved that internal processing. It required the TV's actual video signal to pass through the gun itself. Remember that yellow composite video cable?
Yeah, the one you had to loop through the gun's little box.
Exactly. That wasn't just for show. That allowed the gun con to synchronize itself to the video signal from the console. By tapping directly into that signal, the gun got its own reference point. It knew exactly when the CRT beam was scanning which part of the screen.
Ah, so it bypassed the console's timing issues by reading the video signal directly.
Precisely. And the result was astonishing for the time. Accuracy within a pixel. Critics found this level of precision most necessary for Time Crisis, given how tough it could be. It wasn't just a tech demo, it was essential for the gameplay.
And you can literally see that workaround in the hardware, right? That daisy chain style plug on the GunCon 1.
Yep. The PS1's yellow AV cable plugged into the GunCon's input, and then the GunCon's output cable plugged into the TG's input. The video signal went to the gun.
Right, and the GunCon 2 had that Y cable that did a similar job, splitting the signal.
Although finding those specific cables now, that can be frustrating for retro collectors. Another hurdle.
Yeah, I bet.
But that dedication to pinpoint control wasn't just Namco showing off. It was absolutely crucial for the game. Time Crisis demanded skill for its shots. It wasn't like some other, maybe more forgiving or slop-filled gun games where pinpoint accuracy wasn't quite as critical.
Right. The stakes for getting that accuracy right were sky high, and Namco just nailed it with some really clever thinking.
They really did.
But delivering that accurate, immersive arcade feel on a home console, that was a whole other mountain to climb, wasn't it? Especially given the power difference between the arcade machine and the PlayStation.
Oh, absolutely. This brings in another layer of technical challenge and, frankly, human effort. The PlayStation port of Time Crisis. It was developed by a completely separate Namco team.
Really? None of the original arcade guys?
According to the sources, none at all of the arcade developers were directly involved, which meant this new team basically had to start from scratch.
Wow.
They had to adapt the game from Namco's high-end System 22 arcade hardware, which was a beast for its time. Powerful 3D graphics, custom chips, down to the considerably less powered PlayStation. It was a massive technical challenge, like trying to fit a Ferrari engine into a Mini Cooper.
Yeah. Okay, so what kind of hurdles did they face?
It sounds like it was a real technical battle.
Yeah.
The programmers ran into a lot of obstacles, things like the huge difference in processing speed, the sheer amount of graphics data the arcade version used, and just the basic limitations of the PS1 CD-ROM. You couldn't just load everything into memory at once like you could on the arcade board.
Right, the loading times and memory limits.
Exactly. So they had to make some really significant, probably painful compromises. They had to cut the frame rate in half, from 60 frames per second down to 30.
Ouch. Noticeable.
Probably, but necessary. They had to drastically reduce the number of polygons used for character models and environments. They had to fake real-time lighting effects by manually coloring individual polygons, painstaking work.
Wow.
They even had to delay when enemies appeared on screen just to make sure only a manageable number were visible at once to stop the console from grinding to a halt.
So managing performance was key.
Absolutely. And the graphics designers, they had the job of trim down the original data, make it lighter, but somehow making sure there's no drop in visual quality that players would complain about.
That sounds like walking a tightrope.
One developer called it more detailed-oriented, nitty-gritty work than the original arcade development. Just tons of patience and clever problem-solving needed.
And these weren't just small tweaks, right? They actually had to cut content.
Yeah, that's right. 3 sequences that were planned, maybe even partially developed for the arcade game. An outdoor restaurant scene, a missile room explosion sequence, and a boat race.
Ooh, boat race sounds cool.
Doesn't it?
Yeah.
But they were left out because the team eventually realized that creating them was not practical on the PlayStation hardware, given the time they had.
Man, that really shows the compromises involved, the sheer ingenuity needed just to get it working.
Totally. The stakes were huge. The success of the port, the reputation of Time Crisis on consoles, it all hinged on these tough calls and this new team's ability to capture that arcade magic.
And the fact that they mostly did succeed, that the port was well received by critics, that's a massive achievement, really.
It really is a testament to their skill and hard work.
But their ambition didn't just stop at replicating the arcade game, did it? For a lot of people, the PlayStation version wasn't just a port. It actually added to the experience. It evolved it.
Exactly. And this is where things get really interesting in terms of how an arcade hit can be, well, reimagined for the home audience. The PlayStation version wasn't just a direct translation, even with the technical hurdles.
Right.
It included this whole exclusive special mode, also known as the Canteras deal. And remarkably, this extra mode nearly doubles the size of the game.
Doubles it. Wow.
And what's really compelling is that some critics back then actually considered this console-exclusive content superior to the original arcade campaign. just in terms of depth and replay value.
That's incredible. So the port wasn't just good enough, it was potentially better in some ways?
That's what some people argued, yeah. It speaks volumes about the console team's vision and effort.
Why did they add so much extra stuff? Was it just like value for money?
Well, partly, maybe. But the developers said they added specifically out of concern for players whose first experience with Time Crisis would be this PlayStation port. They didn't want people to feel disappointed with just a short arcade conversion.
Managing expectations. Smart.
Very smart. They deliberately aimed to integrate things like collecting, discovering, and finding stuff. Gameplay elements that were much more unique to console games back then. Things that encourage exploration and repeat plays. They wanted to foster that feeling of finding something new, of talking about it with your friends, driving that word of mouth, encouraging people to play it again and again to see everything.
It really changes the dynamic, doesn't it? From just chasing a high score in the arcade to something more exploratory at home.
Completely. It became less of a pure twitch reflex test and more of an adventure you could sink your teeth into.
So what was this Cantera's deal mission actually about?
Okay, so the setting is this illegal arms factory, but it's cleverly disguised as a fancy hotel. Very Bond villain. Agent Richard Miller has to infiltrate it, not just to take out the owner, this guy Canteras, but to uncover a bigger conspiracy. And unlike the linear arcade game, this mission is full of choices.
Branching paths.
Exactly. Multiple branching paths and even different endings depending on how you play and what choices you make.
Seriously? In a light gun game?
Yeah. For example, depending on your actions, you might go through the hotel's fancy ballroom, or maybe the shopping mall area, or even the underground parking lot.
Okay.
And each path leads to different enemy layouts, different challenges, even unique bosses. In one path, you might fight this assassin called Boomerangs.
Okay.
And in another, you could end up battling this huge spider-legged battle tank.
Cool.
And the stakes feel real too. If you fail certain objectives or don't act quickly enough, Canteras actually escapes, and that escape ending, that's considered the canon one because it directly sets up the story for the spin-off game, Time Crisis, Project Titan.
Wow, that's amazing foresight and interconnectivity for the time. That level of player choice and having your actions affect the outcome, that was a massive step for a light gun game.
Huge leap. It proved the genre could be more than just shooting ducks.
Yeah.
It could have proper narrative depth and player agency.
And speaking of player agency, there's that wonderful story about how players themselves got really creative trying to bring the feel of the arcade home, especially with the pedal.
Ah, yes, the quest for the home pedal.
The arcade had the dedicated foot pedal, obviously, but the PlayStation version had some clever workarounds built in. The GunCon itself had that duck button near the front, right?
The side button, which GameSpot apparently praised because it encouraged you to hold the gun with two hands, more realistically.
Yeah, that was a neat touch.
But what's really great, and just shows how dedicated players were, is the sheer ingenuity that popped up in the community. People really wanted that pedal feel.
They did.
Critics at the time even noted that literally just stepping on the standard joypad's buttons offers the best combination of accuracy and similarity to the foot pedal.
So people were actually putting their controllers on the floor and stomping on them.
Sounds crazy, but yeah, it became a really common thing. It just highlights how much players valued that physical interaction, that tactile feedback. They actively tried to recreate the immersion, even with, makeshift solutions.
You see that all over the Reddit threads we looked at, right? People fondly remembering their own setups.
Totally. Loads of people saying they put a spare PlayStation controller on the floor, specifically to use the X or circle button as their pedal.
Brilliant.
And some went even further, plugging in a racing wheel peripheral into the second controller port just so they could use the pedals that came with the wheel for ducking in Time Crisis.
That is dedication. It just shows how deep that connection was to the game's unique mechanics, how much that physical strategic element mattered.
There was this real desire to bridge the gap between the arcade experience and what the console could offer, and players got incredibly creative in doing it.
So all these things combined, the amazing porting job, the technical achievement of the GunCon, and that huge extra special mode. It led to pretty great reviews for the PlayStation version, right?
Overwhelmingly positive, yeah. Game Rankings, which used to average out review scores, had it at a really strong 86%.
That's high.
Very high. and it snagged Electronic Gaming Monthly's Light Gun Game of the Year award in 1997, which was a pretty big deal back then.
Nice.
Critics generally praised how close the conversion felt to the arcade, recognizing the tech challenges they overcame. And as we said, that expanded special mode was consistently highlighted as a major plus, adding huge value for home players.
But it wasn't perfect, was it? There were still some criticisms floating around, and it's important we touch on those too when we talk about its legacy.
No, definitely not perfect.
Yeah.
And that's part of the story too. Some critics felt the game was maybe too simplistic in certain ways.
How so?
Well, compared to other popular light gun games like Virtua Cop, Time Crisis didn't really have power-ups you could collect, or those innocent bystanders you had to avoid shooting.
Ah, okay. Features that were becoming standard elsewhere.
Exactly. So some found it a bit straightforward in that regard. The lack of any kind of multiplayer mode was also frequently mentioned as a downside, especially for a console game where playing with friends was a big draw.
Yeah, that makes sense. Co-op would have been cool.
Definitely. And one other thing, specifically for players in Europe and PL regions.
Ah, the PAL conversion issue.
Yeah. The PL version, adapted for European TV standards, apparently suffered from noticeable slowness compared to the NTSC versions in North America and Japan. It ran slightly slower, might have had black borders.
Right, that was a common problem back then.
It was. So these critiques, they kind of highlight the different expectations between arcade players looking for that pure, intense burst of action and console gamers who maybe wanted more features, more modes, more polish for their money at home.
Yeah. It shows the challenge developers face trying to please both audiences, even with a massive hit like Time Crisis.
But despite those few criticisms, its impact was undeniable. And its story definitely didn't end with that first PlayStation release. It had legs.
Absolutely. The legacy of Time Crisis is huge, and you can see that clearly in how the series just kept going, expanding its universe. And a big part of that was the villain, right? Wild Dog.
Wild Dog. He's almost more than just a villain. He's like the mascot of Time Crisis adversity.
Yeah. Described as this ruthless mercenary, always with that evil laugh, the cybernetic arm.
And his signature move of blowing himself and everything around him up when you defeat him.
Classic. He became this truly iconic villain showing up in almost every sequel.
He did. And that continuity, having this recurring nemesis alongside evolving gameplay, really shows the series' long-term impact and Namco's commitment to keeping the formula fresh but familiar.
The series kept innovating too. Time Crisis 2 came out in '98, huge deal with the two-player co-op.
Yeah, playing with a friend was amazing. Linked cabinets in the arcade.
Then Time Crisis 3 in 2002 added weapon switching, right, giving you more tactical options.
Machine gun, shotgun, grenade launcher. Added another layer.
Time Crisis 4 in 2006 even tried that experimental FPS mode on the PlayStation 3.
Yeah, that was an interesting experiment. Trying to bridge the gap, maybe.
And Time Crisis 5 more recently in 2015, updated graphics, new pedal mechanics, plus all the spin-offs like Crisis Zone and Raising Storm.
It just kept going. And that core idea, the developers talked about creating tricky movements which try to deceive the player. That always remained central. It was always about challenging your perception and reaction time.
I love that developable quote we found where one of them said their ambition was basically, let's make the most awesome B-movie game ever, we said.
Haha, it perfectly captures that vibe, doesn't it? Over the top, thrilling, maybe slightly cheesy, but incredibly fun.
Exactly. But despite this enduring legacy, this constant evolution, Time Crisis, and all the games, like, it faced this massive problem today. A real hurdle for anyone wanting to play them now.
And this brings us right back to that critical, almost painful point for anyone into retro gaming.
Yeah.
The CRT curtain.
Yeah.
The huge, often deal-breaking challenge now is that absolute requirement for a CRT TV for these light gun games to actually work.
It's not optional, is it?
Not at all. We heard from that Reddit user who said, still have it, but lack a CRT TV to play it on, so it's gathering dust in a storage bin in my garage.
That's heartbreaking, and you hear that story constantly.
All the time. Because the way these guns work, as we went through, that reliance on the CRT's raster scan, it makes them fundamentally, physically, technically incompatible with modern TVs. LEDs, LCDs, OLEDs, plasmas, none of them work the same way.
So when people ask, like that source mentioned, what is the compatible plug-and-play gun con to LED TV? The answer is just...
There isn't one. It's that blunt. The original hardware just won't work.
And that creates so much tension and frustration, doesn't it, for collectors, for people who just want to relive those memories.
It really does. It's not just a small inconvenience. It's this massive barrier.
Yeah.
You basically have two choices. Hunt down an old, bulky, heavy CRT TV.
Which are getting harder to find and keep working.
Exactly.
Right.
Or you just miss out entirely on playing these games the way they were meant to be played.
Yeah.
With that authentic, tactile feel.
And that really raises the stakes for game preservation, doesn't it? If the technology that the core gameplay depends on becomes obsolete and inaccessible, how do you actually keep these experiences alive? Are we losing more than just old software? Is it the experience itself that's vanishing?
It's a profound question. And tied into that is this fascinating generational gap that some of the sources touched on.
Right, the kid's not getting it.
Sort of, yeah. That Reddit user observation about their 13-year-old son and his friends. They try Time Crisis, maybe think the gun is cool for a bit, but then they lose interest after 15 minutes. And it's not necessarily a criticism of the kids. It's just that they have a very different perspective on what is a good game. They grew up with totally different things.
Their nostalgia will be for Roblox and Fortnite, as the user said.
Exactly. Games built around creation, social connection, constant updates, open worlds. It makes you think, what is it about these older, linear, tactile, score attack arcade experiences that doesn't quite click with modern sensibilities?
Is it the graphics, the lack of online, or is it just that the whole way you interact is so different?
It's probably a mix of all of that. The entire design philosophy, the interaction model, it's shifted so dramatically. These classics can feel almost alien, maybe even simplistic, to younger players who expect different kinds of engagement.
It's also really sobering to remember how real-world events can suddenly impact games and hardware, too. The sources mention that the GunCon controller for Resident Evil Survivor on the PlayStation, it was actually removed from the North American release.
Yeah.
Pulled entirely.
Right, because of the timing related to the Columbine tragedy.
Yeah. Such a devastating event. And it led to this period of intense scrutiny around anything involving guns and entertainment, especially games.
It really shows how external factors, societal anxieties, moral panics, whatever you want to call them, they can profoundly shape what gets released, how games are marketed, and ultimately, what players get to experience, sometimes in ways the original creators never intended.
And that adds another layer to preservation, doesn't it? Trying to preserve the original intended experience when it might have been altered or even suppressed due to things happening completely outside the game itself.
Definitely raises the stakes for understanding the full context.
So, okay. Given all these challenges, the CRT issue, the generational gap, but also the huge nostalgia and love for the series, what's the big question everyone's asking now?
A tantalizing question, yeah. Will Namco ever bring the series to modern consoles or VR?
Right, that's the dream for many fans.
And you can see why. With this huge return of retro gaming happening and the growing interest in virtual reality as a way to get truly immersive experiences, a new Time Crisis feels like it could be the perfect title to rediscover the charm of arcade shooters in a modern guise, born back that feeling for a new audience.
But how, if the original GunCon doesn't work on modern TVs?
Well, direct compatibility is out, yes. But there are innovations happening. Things like the Sinden light gun, which got mentioned in the Reddit threads.
Okay, what's that?
It's a newer type of light gun that uses different technology, often camera-based tracking, clever software recognizing borders on the screen, to basically simulate the experience on modern displays. It's not the same tech, but it aims for the same result.
Yeah, interesting. A potential path forward.
Potential path, yeah. And then there's VR. Virtual reality presents this incredibly intriguing possibility to really recapture that sense of immersion of being in the action.
Oh yeah, VR Time Crisis. That could be amazing.
Could be. And it opens up all these exciting but also difficult questions. Could a modern Time Crisis use VR to bring back that satisfying recoil feel, maybe simulate the pedal cover system using VR movement or buttons, recapture that sheer tension?
Could it maybe even improve on some of the things people criticize later games for, like the antiquated presentation or the brutal continue system in Project Titan?
Potentially. But then you have to ask, what might be lost in translating it? That specific raw, physical feeling of the arcade cabinet, the weight of the gun, the stomp of the pedal. Can VR truly replicate that?
Or does it become something different, maybe equally cool, but different?
Exactly. And what new possibilities could VR open up? A greater sense of danger, maybe? More environmental interaction? These are the kinds of questions that make thinking about the future of these classics so fascinating. It's not just about nostalgia, it's about how interaction evolves. #TagOutro.
So, wow, we've really journeyed through the whole adrenaline-soaked world of Time Crisis, haven't we?
We really have.
From those groundbreaking arcade roots, that distinct 90s action movie vibe,
Yep.
to uncovering the hidden technical genius behind the gun con, the incredible effort that went into the home console ports,
Yeah, the porting story is amazing.
and just the enduring passion of the fans who kept it alive with their own ingenuity.
Absolutely.
We've seen how a game can build tension not just through its story, but through its actual mechanics, the physical demands it makes, and the challenges it threw at both players and developers.
It really is a story about more than just a game. The legacy of Time Crisis is, I think, a powerful testament to just how compelling those tactile, immersive experiences can be.
Yeah.
And it speaks to that persistent desire we seem to have across generations to somehow recapture that magic. But as technology races forward, we're left with this really compelling thought, aren't we? Can we truly replicate the unique feeling of that physical pedal, that CRT-dependent light gun, on modern systems?
Or is there something irreplaceable there? That raw physical engagement, as one source put it, that just belongs to its specific time and place?
It's a tough question. What memories, what feelings does this whole dive stir up in you listening?
Yeah, take a second. Think about the games from your own past that gave you a similar kind of feeling. What was it? What unique interaction? What piece of tech? What clever design trick made it unforgettable for you?
And if you had to preserve that feeling, that specific experience for the future, how would you even try to do it?
Food for thought. Thank you so much for diving deep with us today.